Rabbit Hole Roundup, episode 25. Hot take: TikTok won't be removed. Yet, at least. What's happening, guys? Welcome back to Jared and James channel. I'm Jared Weiss. For you guys to know, that must mean that you're not subscribed to the channel, so you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts on this video. Follow me on every platform. So for today's video, obviously we're going to be talking about everything that's going on with TikTok and why I actually disagree with all these people who are jumping on board with this idea that TikTok is automatically going to be removed. But even if that does happen, unfortunately, I'm also going to be talking about why removing TikTok will actually be this horrible thing for our freedom and for our freedom of speech, because TikTok has actually become one of my favorite platforms to get out my message. But we're going to be diving deeper into that now, because I'm sick and tired of all these old people who've never used TikTok bashing it, saying that all this is just dance videos and nonsense, because I actually used to be one of those people until I actually started using it and I actually realized how valuable of a platform it actually is. So without further ado, let's dive into this rabbit hole now. As many people like to say, particularly people from the older generation,
too old,
who've actually never used TikTok before, all of them like to say, and they all want you to think, oh, it's just a bunch of dumb high school kids making ridiculous dance videos and making tons of money off it. And while that is part of the platform, and while I think that a lot of that stuff is nonsense, but of course, to each their own, and I support anyone who's doing what they love and doing it with a passion and who's able to make money off it. But truthfully, as I've found through being a content creator myself, as well as following many other awesome content creators on TikTok, TikTok is actually way more than just a stupid platform. TikTok has actually allowed us to spread so much more truth because our own government and our own CIA isn't actually involved in doing all the censorship, which is actually the whole reason why they want to remove it. They want you to think that, like, oh, it's a national security concern and China's spying on us. But like, meanwhile, our own government spies on us all the time through every other platform and through every other method possible. Content creation actually has the power to benefit so many people if you use your platform for good and for spreading truth, love, and positivity, as I try to do with my platform.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Just because you've been conditioned to believe that every job has to be this miserable 9 to 5 where you're only living for the weekends and you hate going to work every day doesn't mean that it has to be that way for everyone. And why should it? I'm tired of all these old, out of touch people with society trying to tell us what we can and can't do or what we should do. And to be honest, I've actually never liked whenever people try to tell me, oh, this is the path for your life. You have to follow the same conventional route that everyone else did. You have to do X, Y, and Z, and then you have to end up miserable just like us. But why do I want to end up just like all these other unhappy people? Why do I want to contribute to this whole Rockefeller Foundation idea of creating a nation of mindless, thoughtless workers as opposed to a nation of thinkers and free thinkers who's actually capable of creating amazing stuff with the power of their minds, and by realizing how much potential we actually have beyond this limited worldview that we've all been sold? If you're going to sell me and my potential short, and you're going to tell me I have to do exactly what everyone else does and I have to fit in with the rest of this miserable society, as opposed to branching out and doing something creative and doing something beyond this limited scope, then I'm going to go the other direction and I'm going to be happier as a result. Now, of course, are there plenty of problems when it comes to these social media apps? Yes, 1000%. As I've spoken in depth in the past, I don't like how these algorithms promote a lot of nonsense and promote a lot of division and a lot of victimhood, but I'd rather actually have a shot at doing something creative with my life and on social media as opposed to having that taken away from me and taken away from all these other brilliant creators as well. Because I know I'm going to make it, and I know that as long as I don't give up, I'm going to make a powerful impact on the world through these platforms, as I already have done so in the past few years. I see all these people who are constantly saying things like, grow up, it's time to get into the real world.
Grow up, Peter Pan, Count Chocula.
Meaning to take the same exact job as everyone else, to be miserable, to be living below your potential, and to be contributing to the rest of this evil system that's been set up around us. But what if the quote-unquote real world didn't have to be this miserable, horrible place for everyone? But a lot of you out there who claim to be free thinkers are actually encouraging the demise of our creative self. And once again, is social media perfect? No, it definitely isn't. There's definitely a lot of flaws. There's definitely a lot of harmful aspects of it. But generally speaking, I think that social media actually gives us this opportunity for some of us, if we choose so, to escape the classic matrix. I know this is going to sound weird, especially because social media actually is part of the matrix in some ways. But if you see it as a tool that has potential to be used for good, and if you're someone who's actually using it to bring a positive impact to the world and to spread more truth, love, and positivity, you can actually use it to escape the matrix, to seek truth, to watch more positive videos. And once again, I know that in some ways this is actually a contradiction, But all these things, all this technology is just a tool. And if you're in charge of the tool, and if you're going to use it for good, then it's actually a positive tool. As long as you're not controlled by it, as long as you're still getting out in nature, as long as you're still connecting with people in the real world, then you can use it for positive purposes. As I've said in the past, I think that social media has actually backfired on all the elites, quote unquote, or the old guard, reptiles, whatever you want to call these people, because it was initially supposed to be used as this tool for furthering mind control, but it's actually helped a lot of us to break free from that mind control and to follow people who are doing independent research, follow people who are thinking for themselves, follow people who are making a legitimate positive impact on the world. And the whole thing is, TikTok has actually been at the forefront of this truther movement because TikTok doesn't censor the same way that Instagram and Facebook do, and that's why people on both sides of Congress want to remove it, because it's taking away their power to lie to us, basically. TikTok has actually removed some of the veil from the people in power. It's exposed the truth on some of these wars that are going on. It's exposed the truth about flat earth. It's exposed the truth about NASA. I mean, initially, when I first started using it, a lot of my feed was just feeding me nonsense, but like, now it's actually been able to feed me a lot of truth and a lot of interesting theories to think about. And I'm not addicted to it because I set boundaries and I set time limits and I make sure to not overuse any of these platforms, which is of course a challenge some days, especially being a creator on the platforms. But let's also dive into some of the other arguments that are being shown to us. So first off, TikTok isn't even owned by China.
Say China.
One of the largest investors in TikTok is actually from Singapore. I'm pretty sure that the CEO is actually from Singapore. 60% of the other investors are actually all around the world, and so only a small portion of this app is actually run by the people in China. And furthermore, as many of us know, our country loves to blame everything on China and Russia, even as they continue to remove our own freedom. It's this whole concept of projecting what they're doing onto these other countries and telling us these countries are our enemies, or it's this side. It's the Republicans who are doing this. It's Democrats who are doing this, as both sides are working to remove our freedom. Or, this country is a threat to our democracy, as these people are removing our freedom of speech. How ironic is that? And if you're someone who's never used TikTok, and if you're someone who doesn't see all the truth that gets spread on there, then stop suggesting that this is some national security concern because China is spying on us through this app. What do we think Facebook, Instagram, Google...
This is Google, not Match.com.
and all these other platforms have been doing to us for the past several years. Do we seriously think that all these apps aren't spying on us? Alright, so it's okay for our own government to spy on us, but it's not okay for this foreign government to be spying on us. More projecting, more nonsense. Also, let's not forget that some of these American apps literally allowed child for a period of time. Child porn for a period of time, because we can't even say it on this platform. And let's also not forget all of the other measures that were taken in the past few years to protect us and to keep us healthy and to protect our democracy. And this was for our own good and to protect you from not hurting other people. And these people told us that they had to make every decision because we were too dumb to think for ourselves. And for all the parents out there who say that, oh, TikTok is messing with my child's mind. Well, you're setting a very dangerous precedent by allowing the government to parent your kids as opposed to you guys parenting your own kids. It's like, as I often say when it comes to atheists. Atheists most of the time aren't actually true atheists in that they don't believe in any God. Most of the time, they've actually allowed the government, they've allowed science, they've allowed the schools to become their gods. And it's the same thing here. Parents need to parent their own kids. It's not the government's job to be doing that. And once again, are there flaws with this app? Can social media be harmful? Yes. So then monitor what it is that your kids are following on these apps. Make sure that they're actually following high quality accounts. And if you are a creator on one of these apps, stop feeding all the BS algorithms and stop feeding all the negativity. Start promoting more positive things on the apps, spread more truth, help people become their best selves, and then we don't have to worry about all these issues. But I don't want to live in a society where the government can tell us what we can do, where the government can tell us what to eat, what to watch on TV, what to watch on social media, what people we're allowed to interact with and which ones we can't, what music to listen to. I don't want a society where the government is so powerful that everything that comes into our heads and into our lives is being run and controlled by them, as opposed to allowing our own free will and our own decision making to dictate what we allow into our lives. And to all the people who I actually thought were smarter than this, to all the people saying, oh, for anyone who has a business on social media, or for anyone who has a business on TikTok, you had your fun, it's time to go back into the real world. And I don't care if you have your social media business shut down because you're not essential and you're not as important as my real world business. How is that any different from the past few years during the whole scamdemic, when the government actually said to us that if you weren't an essential business, you couldn't stay open? How is that any different from advocating for TikTok to be removed because you don't consider their businesses as essential as yours? Alright, rant over. I think I vented a bit now. And now, for the reason why I actually don't think that TikTok will be removed. And once again, I could be totally wrong on this, and I'm going to give you guys a solution at the end. But the reason why I actually don't see TikTok actually being fully removed is because, so like, when I first started on TikTok, TikTok was actually the least censored app. Everything was actually basically the wild, wild west. You could say whatever you want, you could do whatever you want. But recently, within like the past like month or two, I've actually had numerous posts that violated community guidelines on there that actually didn't violate the community guidelines on any other app. But then recently, all of a sudden, I've had numerous posts that were either taken down or that I actually had to appeal, and I actually won like 4 out of 5 appeals recently. But I don't doubt that maybe it's even possible that some American company actually already bought TikTok and now they're actually starting to censor it more, but maybe they're actually convincing you that TikTok is going to disappear, so that this way everyone gets afraid, everyone gets scared. We all go into these trauma responses, especially those of us who are trying to run a business or who've been using TikTok for work purposes and for positive purposes once again. But then we may actually welcome in the solution, which won't be what we all want and what we all think it to be. So a lot of times this is actually what our government loves to do. They give us this trauma-based action. We all become fearful, we all become afraid. And then when they offer us a solution that's actually way worse compared to how it was before, we actually accept this because we see it as, oh, the government loves us, and they almost become like this parental figure. So that's why I'm actually very skeptical of everything that's going on with TikTok. But a positive thing I actually heard today is that Rumble is actually considering buying TikTok, which Rumble has actually been a great platform for me. Rumble actually hasn't censored anything as far as I see it, and I hope that like they obviously continue to be that way. I can't guarantee anything, but if Rumble buys TikTok, I think that actually will be a really solid solution. But once again, I'm skeptical of this idea of any American company buying TikTok and upping the censorship, which may already be going on right now. We'll see. I don't know for sure, so if, let's just say, TikTok does end up getting fully removed from the US, I do recommend having alternative platforms. I recommend diversifying. I recommend being everywhere, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and wherever else you could be, because realistically, that's the only way for all of us content creators out there to survive, unfortunately, and it sucks. It sucks having the government step in there and ruin these potentially good tools, and it's not easy, but you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta do what you gotta do to stay alive and survive in these hard times. Next up, the next story I want to get into. So like this past week, I actually went to a 76ers versus Pelicans game, and I actually know one of the players on the 76ers. His dad actually coached me back in AAU in high school. But something that was actually very interesting during the game. So like first half, 76ers played awful. This team couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. It was like the sloppiest first half I've ever seen, possibly even in the history of basketball. But then the second half, everything changed. Foul calls started being made, more against the Pelicans, less on the 76ers. Zion Williamson didn't have his way as much anymore in the second half.
Word out on Zion Williamson is that he'll eat the table.
And the 76ers only ended up losing by 8. Now, if any of you guys have watched any of my videos on pro sports possibly being rigged, possibly even being scripted in some cases, now, listen to me here. The point spread for this game was 8.5. The first half, the 76ers were down by 32 points. And then all of a sudden, in the second half, they only ended up losing by 8. And on ESPN, after the game, you can actually see what was the point of emphasis on the bottom of the screen. The fact that the point spread was 8.5 and the 76ers covered that. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying the players are in on it, or at the very least, I'm not saying all the players are in on it, but something very interesting to think about at the very least. Next up, the next topic I want to bring up is history doesn't repeat itself. It often just gets rebranded. I saw an article the other day that said that LSD is now being approved as treatment for anxiety. And I see a lot of people celebrating this as a good thing, as a win for freedom. And I do want to be clear, once again, I don't like the government stepping in there and telling us what we can and can't do with our bodies, with our minds, etc., etc., but LSD was initially used in the 60s as part of the MKUltra mind control experiments, and ultimately was actually used as a way of weakening the resistance to the Vietnam War. Because what happened in the 60s you had this whole movement of musicians and pop culture at Woodstock and all these events, giving out LSD, giving out all these drugs to create a whole culture of mindless people who thought that like they were actually part of the whole anti-war movement, when really a lot of the celebrities and a lot of the musicians who they were supporting were actually kids of the CIA people and people who were actually working for the government as a way of weakening the resistance to the Vietnam War. Because when you have people who are on drugs and who are lost in space, as Don McLean says in the song American Pie, they can't actually resist the war movement. And it's also furthering all the mind control experiments that were done. Now look, I don't want to say that people who have experienced benefits from mushrooms in any form, I don't want to deny them that, but all I'll say is to be very skeptical when it comes to the government suddenly promoting mushrooms, LSD, and telling you that this is a win and that this is going to be good for your anxiety. Because, as I mentioned recently, when it came to the book Social Engineering the Masses, Tavistock Institute, another consequence of the government promoting mushrooms and LSD was this way of opening up new realities and getting people to believe in multiple gods as opposed to the one true creator, and the obstacle to that was the Bible and was having good positive values. So question everything, as I'm always saying. Don't fall for any of these traps. Look into things for yourselves. And once again, I don't want to put down anyone who does believe that those things are good for them, but do your research beforehand. Don't just jump into any of these things just because suddenly now they're being promoted as safe and effective, which we've all heard that before. Now, the final topic for this video I want to talk about is, I saw an article the other day saying that Suge Knight, who I'm pretty sure is actually the guy who's in jail for killing Tupac, even though, as many of us know, there's a lot more to the story beyond that, and most likely some other people might be involved, aka Diddy. But anyways, Suge Knight said that Snoop and Dr. Dre are part of the secret society, which they denied, even though, as many of us know, of course these secret societies are out there in Hollywood and the music industry. That's the whole reason why all these people seem to always support every agenda in lockstep. That's the whole reason why these people support the same politicians, the same policies that end up leading to worsening health and worsening mental health for the quote-unquote normal people, for the everyday normal people. So to act like these people aren't part of the secret societies, and to act like these people aren't going to these Bohemian Grove ceremonies, and that these people aren't performing some weird rituals, is crazy. And I actually find that laughable. And if any of you guys doubt what I'm saying, read the book Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon by Dave McGowan, which exposed the whole music industry. However, like, it actually doesn't go into the rap industry, but like, that's a whole nother story. But Ice Cube actually exposed the whole rap industry. I mean, he recently said, like, as I spoke about during my last video, during my last Rabbit Hole Roundup, he admitted that gangster rap was actually a CIA psyop. It was used to sow division, and that ultimately led to more black people going to prison for drugs and for violent offenses. Of course, all these musicians are always going to be holding up the hand signals, always going to be showing the pyramids, always going to be using numerology to carry out certain rituals. But yet, these rappers are going to tell you that they're not part of a secret society, even when in many of their songs they'll even be talking about selling their souls to the devil, or supporting Baphomet, or these guys will be wearing dresses, which is another humiliation ritual, as Suge Knight actually mentioned in the video. So don't be so naive as to think that Hollywood and the music industry are innocent, and that all these people just got so high up because they all worked harder than you. They all just worked so much harder than you. Guys, remember, there's an agenda behind most of these people. Not saying that every celebrity is like an awful person, but like, think for yourselves. Don't just blindly follow any of these people, and realize the agendas behind promoting them. So question everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to leave a like, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.